And one of the questions that's often asked is, show us an example of successful anarchic experiments in the world. And, everybody reads 1984 and Animal Farm. How many people read An Homage to Catalonia? I wonder if you could just touch on, for our libertarian friends, the experiments that were really, really compelling and fascinating that occurred in the 30s in Spain in particular, which could give people something to explore or something to look at as an example of how effective these kinds of organizations can be.
Well, actually, the year there was 1 year of revolution in Spain, the mostly anarchist revolution in 1936, which was actually quite successful until it was crushed by force. And it's striking that it was crushed by the combined forces of every power system in the world, the communists, the fascists, and the liberal democracies. And then they fought each other to pick up the spoils. But one thing they weren't going to tolerate was a free society of people running their own affairs. But there's plenty more. It takes, I wouldn't call them pure anarchists by any means, but systems that have many of those characteristics. So take, for example, the Mondragon conglomerate in Spain, Basque country in Spain, big conglomerate, worker-owned, partially worker-managed, not totally. It includes industrial production, including high-tech industrial production, banks, hospitals, living, housing, and so on. And it's quite successful. Or take what's happening in parts of the old Rust Belt in the United States, where there's a spread of worker-owned enterprises. It's not huge, but developing, pretty successful. There's interesting work on this by Garel Parovitz in particular. These all have a kind of an anarchist flavor to them. It's worth remembering, considering the way you describe your audience, that there's one crucial difference between American libertarianism and traditional libertarianism. Traditional libertarianism was opposed to any form of dominance and hierarchy. One of the slogans was "No God, no master," meaning no ecclesiastical dominance, no masters in industry and personal life and families anywhere else. American libertarianism is quite different. It's perfectly happy to support masters. In fact, it extols them. It's in favor of it. It wants no interference with the domination and control of people in the workforce, let's say. That's very counter to traditional libertarianism, either in Europe or, for that matter, in the United States. If you go back to the 19th century, early days of the Industrial Revolution, there were mass popular movements which had their own journals. You can read what they said and so on. And they were just spontaneous. They were opposed to the way in which the industrial system was forcing them to turn into tools of production under someone else's control and destroying their independence as free people, also destroying their culture. Their slogan was, "Those who work in the mills should own them." That was taken for granted. In fact, it was what they called wage slavery, wage labor. They regarded as not very different from chattel slavery. Now, that was such a popular position in the United States in the 19th century that it was a slogan of the Republican Party. Wage labor is tolerable because it's temporary, but people should control their own industrial fate. This is as American as apple pie and quite different from what's called libertarianism today. These are important things to bear in mind.